All right, everyone, welcome to Church Brand Guide. My name is Michael Persad. This is why I want to serve you as your virtual communications director. So ultimately, I can help you become your church's brand expert. And the reason for that is that I want to help you learn how to attract more people. And once you do attract them, learn how to get them to contribute. Because ultimately, that's what moves the needle for our churches, is that people are contributing to the vision that God has given us. Today, I'm going to jump into the topic of a target audience. So a target audience is it's kind of a big idea that we talk about in marketing world. In fact, in marketing, the target audience is something that we talk about all the time, like in the marketplace. But when it comes to a church, the target audience is a little bit hard to get our heads wrapped around. Because on a spiritual side, there's actually two sides to this. There's a spiritual side, and then there's a marketing side or a business side. I guess you could even call it that. Um, you guys are part of this podcast, and also the membership or just part of the my email list. So you kind of understand where I'm coming from with a lot of this. There's a spiritual side that you as the pastor, man, you've got that nailed down. You've got a vision, a calling. And then I want to come alongside and on the marketing or business or branding side, help you gain some good perspective to take that vision that God has given you and to make it known in your community so that more people are attracted to it. So you guys understand what I mean by when I talk about that. So a target audience definitely is about the on a marketing side. Like how do we do that? How do we choose? So on a church side, everybody's welcome. Everybody can come into our doors. Everybody can hear the gospel and respond to it. But how do we do something with that on the marketing side? So we'll get into that. Our journey that we like to take here on this membership is that, first of all, we need to get clear about who we serve and then how we do that. Who are we? What's our vision? Let's get super clear about it. Let's create language. Let's create a graphic standard. Let's create icons. Let's create a logo. Let's create a website. Let's get extremely clear about who we are. And then from that, create the experience that people can have and then attract them and then ultimately get buy-in so that they are able to be part of the vision and support the vision that God has given to us. I just as kind of a way to serve you as a virtual communications director, I like to bring up where we are. So in the course of a year, we're in quarter four. We're in kind of the middle of the fall season. It's interesting for me because this is the first fall that I've been in South Florida. So you guys may know that my family moved down to South Florida to help Pastor Brandon plant Vibrant Church in just west of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So it's the first time we don't have a real fall. So it's interesting that it's 83 degrees outside and sunny when right now back in Kansas City, where I'm from, it's about a 58-degree day and it's cloudy. So it's interesting that the leaves aren't changing or anything here. So it's just a different experience for me. So with that, we're in quarter four. So quarter four is a great time to be outward focused. We can kind of ride the natural momentum of Thanksgiving and Christmas and how people naturally kind of turn outward in that season. So if we did things like community outreaches or anything like that, it's a great time to do those type of things. It's on top of people's minds, so you don't necessarily have to gain momentum. You already have some sort of momentum happening. Also, it's a great time for planning and budgeting for 2020. Next year's coming up, so this is the time to budget for it. I have a great resource on budgeting, so check that out. Especially if you're a member, you have access in our Facebook group, the Church Branding Hub Facebook group, where you can check that out, that video. Also, I have a PDF download to help you with that. Also, get ready for Christmas. If you have not already determined your promotions and your event, now's the time to do it. Also, let's take a look at quarter one of next year. It's October. We should be thinking about January. What is it that we have in January that's going to attract people? What is it that we have in January that's going to help people get into our family, our church family? So a New Year's series is a good idea. Maybe there's a conference that you do. Um, Something that's attractional is a great idea in January. So there's different types of events. There's attractional events that are aimed towards the outside, people that are outside the walls. And then there are internal events that are more for the people in the church. And there's certain times of the year that are really good to reach outside of the walls. And January is a great time to do that. Also a great time for groups to start. If you guys do small groups of any kind, it's a great time to promote those groups. Even if your groups go all year round, just reset that idea of groups in January. It's a great time to do that. Maybe towards the end of January, that's going to be a great time to do it. Also a great time to build teams. Maybe towards the end of the month, you can kind of push that idea of building teams leading up into Easter, so you have plenty of people. So when I say build teams, a good way to do that, a good method to do that, is basically start celebrating teams. So start sharing stories of people that are on your teams. Maybe somebody that serves in a nursery. Begin to tell stories early in the year, celebrating those people, so that later on, maybe in February or March, you can then begin to ask people to join teams. And it's a great way to set that up. All right. So that's a quick look at our planning. I did want to pause for a moment as well and just talk about my journey with Vibrant Church and Pastor Brandon. We are 8 weeks into planting Vibrant Church. And just a quick update, because we're applying everything we're talking about on these calls, like everything we're talking about, we apply it at Vibrant Church. So I want to give you direct feedback, like what does that look like as we execute the game plan, so to speak. So Vibrant Church is 8 weeks in. We started off with about 280-ish or so on week one. And what we understand and what we know through our training is that we are going to drop about 50%. And it's going to take about 12 weeks for us to bottom out. Like somewhere in there, we're going to bottom out, dropping about 50%, because everybody shows up on week one and then people kind of come in and out for a while until you figure out exactly who's going to stick. So again, we're a church plant, new church, maybe a different situation than what you're in, but we did maximum effort to draw attention, and we had about 280 people show up on week one. We have last week, as of last week, we had about 180 or so show up, which is great. I mean, for a church plant, that's a really strong number, especially coming in from Kansas. Like we didn't have anybody that we knew in the area. So to gain enough traction to where we had a good number was great. What we found is that we might have bottomed out. So we might have bottomed out at about 160. That's about 2 weeks ago. In the last couple weeks, we've hit about 170 and then 180. So our hope is that we're on the uphill climb where we're starting to get new people coming in, and people that have maybe checked us out in the past are coming back. One of the things we're trying to do is really focus on culture. How do we train our people? So rituals are a great part of a brand. Now I say rituals because it kind of grabs people's attention, because it's not a word that we commonly use. But the idea is, what do you do on a regular basis that's a routine? Like every single week, people just know that that's what you do. So, your song service and the flow of your service and different things like that become kind of a ritual. But you can even take it to another level. So one of the things we are trying is at the end of the service, our tagline is "Live a Better Story." So we want people, no matter where they are in life, to live a better story. And at the end of the service, we have a thing that we do where it's Pastor Brandon just says, "Hey, listen, we're glad you came here today. We just want you to keep coming back, because when you keep coming back, you will live a better story." And then we've been training the congregation to say "live a better story" with us at the very end. So everybody in the crowd basically says "live a better story." And it's just something we do at the very end of service to kind of say something together and unite us. So it's just an idea, a thought that we had that has been working to help build a culture with what's going on. So that's the latest kind of on Vibrant Church. We are getting ready for a new series. Later on in this call, I'm going to talk about the promotions for the new series, because we're leaning into the what I'm going to call an avatar, the target audience that we have. We're leaning into it and asking, what do they need? And then from that, we're actually teaching. Pastor Brandon actually has probably 6 to 10 months already planned out for messages, and where we're going to go based on the need of our target audience. And again, we're going to unpack what a target audience is. Let's just jump into that right now, and then we'll circle back to it. I will have a Q&A session towards the end of our call. So let me just get through this content, and then I'll open it up. I want to encourage you, if you're working on a promotion or a specific project, or you have a specific problem, maybe it's you're trying to use your branding guide, or maybe you're trying to get your pastor to respond a certain way, or maybe you're a pastor and you're trying to get people on your team to respond a certain way. I want to leave room for you to maybe ask some of your questions. And then maybe I have a good bit of insight for you, or maybe somebody else on our call has some insight for you. So let's build a community out of this and help each other out. So the target audience, let me go right into our presentation. The idea is that as on a marketing side, we need clarity. We have to get clear. In fact, behind me, this is, I've been working on several brands for different churches this past week. And one of the things that I try to explain every time is this idea of a target audience, and it's a bullseye. And if you've been through this with me before, you probably remember this. But we need to pick a bullseye with our marketing. And the thing that happens with our marketing is that when we're clear about the ideal person that our church is going to be great at serving, then there's other people on the outside that become really attracted because of the clarity that we have. So we need to and it doesn't have to be a demographic. It doesn't have to be an age. It doesn't have to be an ethnicity. A target audience could be a mindset. So for example, people needing purpose is the target audience for Vibrant Church. So it's just like people that are wandering around in life. So we found in this area, South Florida, people don't have purpose. It's one of the big things, the big needs that they have. So we have built a brand around this idea of helping people find purpose. So the way that Pastor Brandon teaches is very in line with that. The messages that he's put together is in line with that. How do we help people find their purpose? And we lean into that quite a bit. So we have to have that clarity so that we can move them to ultimately where we hope they will end up, and that is part of our church. So they start off as being a stranger. They don't know anything about our church, but we want them to know about our church. So our goal is to turn the stranger into a first-time guest, and we need to have a strategy in place to do that. Our strategy, what I recommend, is that it's your website that does that. Your website should be built for the stranger so that they can ultimately click a button to find out the service time and all that good stuff, to where they come to visit on the weekend. From there, we want them to become an attender. That means when they come for the first time, we want them to have a great experience in the lobby before they even get into the auditorium, because they will make a decision whether or not they're going to come back within the first 7 minutes of being at the church. So how can the parking lot experience be great? How can the lobby experience be great? Because we want to ask them to come back for a second visit. And then once they are attending, how do we ask them to become members? So we need to have an announcement. We need to have a place for people to take a next step to actually learn about the church and their role in the church, and ultimately become a member. Now, member is kind of a big idea. It means a lot of different things in a lot of different churches. The big idea I want to communicate with that is that we try to basically ask people to join our mission. So we have to have a place that we do that. So at Vibrant Church, every single week we announce that we have this thing called a growth track. And it's basically our membership process. And every single week we do it after the service. It's 2 weeks, so it's week 1, week 2, and then we start over week 1, week 2. And it just happens every week. And every single week we announce it. Hey, we would love for you to be in growth track. What we're seeing is really good responses. We had 21 people show up. We had 22 the initial first couple weeks. Last week we had 11. The week before that 6. The week before that 10. So every single week we keep on. It's moving the needle for our church. We're asking people. We're trying to. It just sounds that not quite right, but we're trying to close the deal. We're trying to ask them to opt in and be part of this church on a regular basis when they're ready. There's no pressure, but at the same time, it's ready for them, like right after service. And then we are trying to get really good at sharing stories. So how do we use our iPhones? How do we say something from the stage and we just talk about the stories of life change that's happening within our church? So again, the target audience helps us to have the clarity of what we need to make this happen, to make it take place. So if you're going to find a target audience, and I'm going to get into how to find it, and then I'm going to get into how to use it. Very practically, how do we use it? How do I use it as an agency to help different churches? How does Vibrant Church use it to help reach more people and start that upward trend of growth that we're starting to see? First of all, how you find it, I would just say create a large list of every single type of person that you can think that's in your community. Maybe you can list out single moms. Maybe you can list out hopeless people. Maybe you can list out people without purpose. Maybe you can list out businessmen, young adults, everything you can think of. There might be 20 different things that you can think of that's in your community. Maybe I'm actually working with a church in Iowa, and they have a very large farming community and manufacturing community. So part of the mix is that farmers and people that work in factories, basically, is the idea, blue collar workers. So we just created this huge master list. And then what you want to do is narrow that down to one. And I'd like to kind of push you to get it down to one. And I think a quick win for most churches is that it's maybe a dad that has kids, so married with kids, something along those lines. So the reason I say that, in fact, that's kind of where we are with Vibrant Church. The reason, and it works for most churches, but the reason I say that is a brand that is more leaning towards males is actually more attractive to a larger audience. And then also a brand for a church where kids are involved is a brand that is stable. Like if somebody comes and the kids like it, they're going to be around for a long time. So on a marketing side, again, on a church side, everybody's welcome. Anybody and everybody's welcome. Doors are open. We're so happy you came. On a marketing side, if we can attract with our messaging those type of people that have some kids, like we just know it's going to be an attractional church. Basically, they're going to love it. We've built a whole church around that. We've invested into kids ministry, and we've invested into a bunch of different things to make those people absolutely love our church. So we want to lean into that. We want to, once we figure out who that audience is, we want to learn about their values and their problems that they have. And then we want to speak into those problems. So on a marketing side, this is a very basic framework. And again, I'm sharing some of the technical stuff. We'll get to the practical here in just a moment where I give you some examples. But what is the problem that they have? So again, Vibrant Church as the example. The problem is they lack purpose. The solution, what is the solution that we provide as a church? We want to help them find purpose through the Bible, but we aren't going to say that necessarily on our advertising. We're just going to say, hey, listen, you can discover your purpose at Vibrant Church. That's kind of how we say it. So they lack purpose. We're speaking into, we can help you find purpose for your life at Vibrant Church. Or another way to say it is we can help you leave a legacy here at Vibrant Church. So it's about purpose. And then the result that we want for them. So this is a marketing formula. It's the infomercial that you see at 2 a.m. in the morning. They're using the same problem, this same formula, where they talk about the problem, the solution they provide, and then the results that you can get. So at Vibrant Church, we're saying the results is if you come to Vibrant Church and you're a part of it, you will live a better story. So we're just pointing back to what we know they want. So they want to be a good husband. They want to be a good employee. They want to be a good business owner. They want to live a better story. So we're just pointing it back to that. So the problem, the solution, the result. Can you simplify what your church does into those three different things? What's the biggest problem? Now there's many problems and there's many things that you can address as a church, but can you kind of simplify it into one big idea? And then can you say, this is our solution? Like And again, I'll give you 3 examples of things that work for churches. One example of a solution is that we are a church that helps you find hope. So if you're a very inspirational type of a church, like you could speak into hope. Maybe number 2 would be purpose. We are a church that helps you find purpose. I talked about that with Vibrant Church. And then number 3 is we are a church that can help you find community. So some churches are extremely good at helping people find community, like a sense of family and groups and all those different things. So those are 3 simple ideas that you can maybe play around with within your church context, within your church brand, and then lean into it. Like if you're really good at community, lean into it. Reach out with everything that you've got, basically with your advertising, and lean into it. Now, chances are, and I know this is to be true for just about every church, you're good at all 3. You're good at hope, you're good at purpose, and you're good at community. But lean into the one that you feel resonates the most with your audience and that you're the best at doing. This is our avatar. So I think I sent out an email talking about an avatar. And so in marketing world, you create a person, just an imaginary person that you get to know them almost like a real person. And then as you're creating messaging or anything else for what you're doing with the advertisement or marketing, you're actually saying, hey, what does Chris want? Like, what is it that he's dealing with that we can solve? So for us at Vibrant Church, Chris Broward is our avatar. We just created him. I just found that picture online somewhere. But this is kind of a good representation of who our target audience is. It's a guy that's roughly 25 to 35 years old. He's probably married. He has some kids. In fact, on the right-hand side, you'll see some descriptors about who he is. We have married with 1.7 kids. So he's basically, we're trying to show like he's just the average person that's out there. He makes good money, lives in Broward County. So Chris Broward. So Broward County is the county that we're in. He wants to be the hero to his wife. He's stressed and has some debt. So we're just kind of explaining who this guy is. And then as we come up with promotions and different things to reach him, we have clarity about what those pain points are, and we can create a great experience for our avatar. And it gives us extreme clarity. So I would encourage you, if this is something that you can do, I would encourage you to say, who is our avatar? Who is the person that our church is really, really good at serving? What are their needs? And let's just describe that. And let's create an emotional attachment of what we want for them. In fact, the emotional attachment that we want for Chris, I mean, it becomes real. Like, we want Chris to have purpose in life because it will make a difference in the lives of his kids for generations. Like, there could be an impact that happens through Chris that lasts for a long time, and it is a positive impact. We want Chris to find community. We don't want him to be alone. We don't want him to be depressed. Like, this becomes emotional. Like, we become really attached to Chris, and we use it to form our marketing around. In fact, so let's get practical now. I've been talking about kind of theories and concepts. So Chris is our practical example of what this looks like. I want to show you a quick video. So at Vibrant Church, we are trying to reach Chris. And Pastor Brandon started off with kind of an inspirational message series about finding purpose in life, and he did about 4 weeks on that. And then we said, hey, Chris has problems with his relationships. So then Pastor Brandon taught a whole series on relationships. And he just finished up the series, but it's about how to have great relationships. And then we also said, hey, Chris has a problem with church. Like, he grew up at a church that didn't maybe do things the right way. So he has a problem with church. And so we're getting ready to go into a new series starting this week about Jesus and just unpacking who Jesus really was, because we think Chris has just a bad idea of what Jesus is. So we're going to reset that. And so we're using the avatar to really shape the journey that we have. After this series, we're going to have another series around Christmas. And I forgot what it's called, but the idea is that it's going to be a stressful time of year. So we're going to help Chris out by having a series about how do we make the most meaning out of our Christmas, because it'll be right before Christmas. So that's how we're using it on a very practical basis. This is a video. I'm going to play the video. It's about 30 seconds long. It's not very long, but it's a promotional video for our series called Savage Jesus. So yes, we're calling it Savage Jesus. We actually found that title from a different church, and we thought it was a great fit for South Florida, where people just have the wrong idea of who Jesus is. We're like, hey, Savage Jesus is probably something that's going to grab people's attention. It's going to grab Chris's attention. So we went with Savage Jesus. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to have to share my whole screen. So give me 1 second here to do that. And you'll be able to see this video that we shot. And we shot it just with an iPhone. This is the promotional video we're going to put out there on Instagram and on Facebook for Savage Jesus. So simple setup, but listen to the messaging, because we really focused on what is Chris's needs, and we created some messaging for that.
Culture and religion taught us that Jesus was religious, he was exclusive, and ultimately he was weak. Mark Twain said it like this: God created man in his own image, and man, being a gentleman, well, he returned favor. What if I told you that Jesus was actually not religious? He was incredibly inclusive. Not only was he not weak, he was actually savage. Over the next few weeks, we're going to look at who Jesus really was, how it actually could change your life. So what if you exchanged an image of a weak Jesus for a savage Jesus? So you could exchange a weak faith for a strong faith. I want to encourage you to join us for these next few weeks as we experience Savage Jesus.
All right, so that's an example of the messaging, and we really worked on that wording just to say, hey, what does Chris need? What's Chris going to respond to? And then even the location, we went to a place where Chris would hang out. That was at a park with a walking trail. So in South Florida, that's kind of what people do. It's nice weather all the time. So there's a lot of parks, a lot of walking trails. So it really shaped of the entire promotion to have Chris in mind. In fact, Pastor Brandon he was thinking about Chris as he was saying those words. So as we're doing the recording, in his mind, he's like, I'm talking to Chris. It's not that I'm talking to this crowd of people. I'm talking to Chris. And as the person behind the camera kind of directing things, I'm trying to help him remember that as well. You're talking to Chris. What would you say to Chris in this moment? And how does that come across as being very genuine? This is the series of ads. I want to show you the ad design that we have for Savage Jesus. So this is, we basically chose a photo, and it's just a classic photo of Jesus that you might see in a museum somewhere. So we're trying to say that basically people have one view of Jesus that's, in a painting from 1854, but we want to reset that. Like, what is Jesus really like? So we have some words on the left that says, hey, Chris might be thinking that Jesus is weak, exclusive, and religious. But what we want to say is, no. Jesus isn't that. Jesus is strong, he's inclusive, and he's savage. And again, hopefully the word savage is a great hook to basically get them to come check out what we're trying to say. Here's another ad. Let me see, I have one more version of this, I believe. Here we go. So we're going to just basically do one word at a time, where it just says, Jesus wasn't weak, Jesus was strong. And again, with a classic photo of Jesus in the background, because Chris might have a religious background, there's Catholicism and stuff is kind of in this area. So we want to say, no, let's do a reset on what that is, that you might think about Jesus. And let's reset it with this idea of a strong or a savage Jesus. Let me show you another ad. I'm going to pull this one up. Actually, I didn't have it pulled up ahead of time, but we were running an ad in a magazine for Vibrant Church, and we just completed it. And we're using Chris as the driving factor for, hey, what is this ad going to look like? We need an ad for the magazine. So instead of being generic about, hey, we're awesome, you should come check us out, We're trying to speak more into like what does Chris need, and then how to create an ad that represents that. So at the very top of this ad, you'll see there's a great photo of people in the church smiling, having a great time. We have Live a Better Story. We have this idea of like, see what's new to Plantation, because Plantation, Florida is where Chris lives. We have our message down below of Discover Purpose. We have a picture of this lady that's greeting. She's young and she's greeting. She has "You Belong Here" to sign next to her that says "You Belong Here." I'll kind of zoom into that so you can see a little bit more detail. But again, we're just saying, hey, Chris, if you saw this ad, I think he would really be drawn to come check it out. And then we have the service times and information. But it's the color scheme, the photos that we're using, the messaging is all shaped based on Chris's needs, and it's guiding our look. And then the cool thing is that over time, all of our stuff looks like it belongs together. Like it creates a cohesion with everything that we're creating, because it has a certain feel to it. And in branding world, when you do that, it builds trust. It builds brand loyalty. People know they can trust your brand, and they can trust your message ultimately, and they're more willing to buy into it. So I'll show you two other things, and then I'll wrap it up because we're at our limit with time. We use brands to help shape designs for like logos. So this is a logo that we just created for Generations Church. They're trying to reach multi-generations within the church. And so they wanted to do this in Atlanta. So I just want to show you kind of what this looks like. Again, we're using the target audience to drive the design for Generations Church. And this is kind of what we came up with. Go Church, I've shared with them a little bit more. They want to reach people who want to make a difference in their community. So the name of the church itself is Go Church. And then from that, we created a logo that represents the vision that God has. So it's movement. It's this big go and arrows moving forward, because that's what the DNA of the church is. So then we have a couple different looks that we came up with as far as the rest of the branding for Go Church. I did want to take this one step further with Go Church, because we also created a couple of sub brands for Go Church where we're targeting their kids and also targeting the student ministry. So let me show you the kids logo. This is just representing, it's designed to appeal to the kids in the church. And then this is the student logo, designed to appeal to the student ministry, teenagers basically, that are in the church. So 3 different looks for the same church, 3 different brands for the same church. We recommend, like, maybe kids and youth, those are good ideas to brand, but try not to brand too many things. But this is what it starts to look like as you keep in mind your target audience. So a teenager is going to respond differently than an adult. So they have a different brand that we created for them. Same thing with a child who's going to respond differently than a teenager or differently from an adult. So we have 3 different brands with the 3 different audiences in mind. But it's a great example because it's the same church with 3 different audiences, which allows us to have 3 completely different looks based on the audience. So I thought it was just really a good example of what that looks like. All right, let me wrap it up. So thanks for joining me on this call about target audience. I hope it helps you to get your marketing lined up to where it's consistent and it's more effective, because you have this clarity with your messaging, with your graphics. And my hope is that you are able to use this in a very practical way. So with that, if you have any questions, let me know, because I want to help you implement this as much as I can.
Hey, Michael.
Yes. Hey, John.
From Palm Harbor, Florida.
Hey, John.
Hey there, Michael. A question about kind of website. You said we want to make it for strangers and make it stranger friendly. That's a shift in how our old website worked, and a little shift in the thinking of how to use it. So our members are like, well, can I just go to the website? Can you just put a link on the website? And And really that was for internal volunteers. We didn't want strangers to volunteer. We wanted our internal people to volunteer. So how do we express the culture difference of a website built for strangers than maybe how it was before, where it's built for us?
Yeah, so a good website is definitely for a church is going to help the stranger to make their way to a weekend service. But it also does, for most churches, you're going to need a website that does serve the congregation. So couple of thoughts. A mobile app is a great way to go to serve church members. Um, so if that's an option, that's a great way to be able to announce all those things. So it's a movement that I've seen that churches are doing where the website is for the stranger, the mobile app is for the members, and you have all the different announcements and everything in the mobile app. Now, if you can't do that anytime soon, um, having a section of the website that is designated for the members, and then telling them where to go. Like, so you can train the members, but you can't train the new people. So train the members, hey, listen, if you need, maybe we do need to post, I don't know, a Tuesday morning meeting for ushers or something like that. Something very, very internal. Maybe you create a news page or something along those lines that is just for those items. Some churches I've seen, and I've created them too, where they use a blog feature on their website to basically be a newsletter. It's very internal, and we can set up your domain. So your domain is myeastlake.church. We can actually set up a domain that's myeastlake.church / newsletter or something like that. And then in that area, they can get all that in, like links and all sort of internal information. Maybe even stick I don't like putting Google calendars on websites.
Yeah.
It's just kind of tacky, but maybe that's where you could put the Google Calendar for the internal member, so they can see every meeting that's happening, throughout the month, and be able to plant it there. So I think there's create a section where it is safe for that to happen. And I know that'll kind of meet the need for the internal people.
Yeah.
And if it's a blog, if we set it up as a blog, then you can have multiple categories of it. So you can have a news category for just like news. You can have an events category, or even like a meetings category of some kind, where you can filter those posts by what they are.
Do you have a recommendation for an app company you use that's economical and decent?
I don't have a good one off the top of my head. The one that I've come across that works really well is Pushpay. They're actually they take like online payments and text to give and all that stuff, but they produce a really good app as well. But let me write that down. I'll see if I can maybe find one or two that I could recommend.
Okay.
I don't actually build apps, so I don't know the ins and outs of it.
A little different beast, but yeah.
Right.
Appreciate the insight.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? How do you communicate to the internal congregation without creating a website that is crazy busy? Or if you have another question, any other questions, let me know that as well.
This is Stanley Scott, pastor at Faith Family Church in Houston. Planning Center has a Church Center app, and we've been utilizing that for the membership to get some of that basic communication in-house, so that we can retain our website for the stranger, so to speak.
Stanley, what was that called again?
You might be familiar with Planning Center.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have an app that's associated with Planning Center when you become a client of Planning Center, and it's called Church Center app. And members, it's I highly recommend it. If you are already on Planning Center, but it's an app that they produce it. It's connected to your church. People can give through the app. They can sign up for events through the app. They can find out about, you can get message notes through the app. So it's a lot of really positive things. Oh, and kids can check in they can check in right from their app.
Sounds great. I'm gonna have to check that out. Thanks for the recommendation.
Awesome. Any other questions that you might have? Pastor Chris on our Facebook group, I think, am I still sharing my screen? Yep, I am. So on the Facebook Church Branding Hub group, he was asking a couple things about gaining momentum. So anyway, I'll just address that one question, and I'll probably have Pastor Brandon respond to it as well. What we have been learning is, so we're only 8 weeks into it, but how do you get momentum? So momentum is something that's like a kind of ooey gooey thing. It's not measurable or whatever. But what we've been coached up into is like, hey, listen, right now, what we need to do is focus on culture, building a great culture that is excellent. And it's about, the details, and it's about being authentic and genuine and helping people. And how do we so we've been doing like meetings once a month with our leadership team, and we get together, like physically get together and have fellowship and pray for each other. And so we're trying to build culture. And then Pastor Brandon speaks into that. Like he has I think it's 8 or so cultural statements. Like one of the statements is make it better. So as part of our culture, we're always asking, how can we make this better? And he's teaching on like, what does that mean? And how do we apply it? And those type of things. So for right now in this season, like we're just pouring everything we've got into like, how do we create a culture around our church that can help us to ultimately gain momentum. And what we've found, again, what we've learned, we haven't done it yet, but from other churches, is that when you focus on the culture, like at some point it starts to kick in where you see the results of it. So it doesn't happen right away, but you start to see all of a sudden, like there's this growth that starts to take place, and you're not sure like, oh man, where did this come from? We're just doing more of the same that we've been doing, but it kind of hits a tipping point where you start to see the results of that. So Pastor Chris, I hope that kind of helps out a little bit. That's, again, what we're being coached up into. And it's really what we're focusing on right now is, so even on Sunday mornings, like Pastor Brandon literally gets up on the stage and is like, hey, listen, at the end of our service, like he says, I want you to say this. When I say you just need to come back next week, I want you guys to say, live a better story. So he's literally like teaching people how to do that. And then if I'm doing the announcements, I'm literally saying, hey, listen, we come to church every week. So we're trying to build a culture, and we're being very like authentic or raw about it. Like, here's what we want you to do. And we're just going to do that for a while until we start to see, hopefully, some momentum get on the field. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see that uptick of growth starting to take place. Let me ask anybody working on a project right now that has maybe have a question or need a, or even you want to share. Like if you just want to share, hey, listen, I'm working on this project. It's kind of a cool one. It's a promotion, maybe something coming up in October or in for Christmas. All right. Well, let me just close out this call then for today. We basically talked about this idea of the target audience. I'd love to encourage you to. I know right now on the screen, like, man, that's pretty deep. Like that's crazy. An avatar, really? I get that response a lot. So I know you're saying it. I know you're nodding your head. I can't see you right now, but I know it's like, whoa. But I would encourage you. Marketing agencies, this is what they do. They do it all the time. And the reason you're on this call is because you want to think differently about church and ministry, and how do we do things a little bit more intentionally to reach people that aren't here. So you have different motivations. Maybe you've been doing church for a while and you just aren't seeing results. Maybe your church has been around for a while. You're in a place of decline where you're just not reaching people like you used to. or maybe you're a new church starting up and you're just wanting to, like us, and you're just wanting to gain momentum. I want to present this idea, submit this idea to you to be like, hey, listen, if you can get clear about something like this, it'll really help to create a consistent experience that people can trust and that speaks to the needs of the community like never before. You won't be wishy-washy. You won't be over here one week and then over there a different week. It'll keep it very consistent and focused. And again, marketing agencies do this. The people that promote Coca-Cola are doing this. They have an avatar and they're like, hey, does our avatar like these things? If so, let's do it. If not, let's not do it. And they're making billions of dollars doing that. So I just want to take that little component and apply it to your church. So hopefully we can take that vision that God has given you and get it out there. Let the light of Jesus shine in your community in a more effective way to where people are responding to it. And again, we're seeing some of this fruit coming from Vibrant Church, where people really are responding to it. We had a great story this past week where one of our members invited a coach of their son's football team to come to church. And he came to church because of this idea of live a better story. And he came with his two sons, and they sat in our service, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And they came back to our table, our next steps table, and said, we're going to come back. And then we found out they are Jewish. And we're like, whoa, okay. That's awesome that you're Jewish and you're going to come back and at least for another week. And that's the goal. How can we get them to come back for another week? But it's because of the great presence of God, of course, that's the main thing. And it's because of the focus and clarity that we have leading up into that we're able to see some really cool stories taking place. So just want to encourage you with that. And thanks for joining me. If you have any questions throughout the week, feel free to shoot me an email or maybe jump into our Facebook group. I'm also going to place the video I showed you with Pastor Brandon in our Facebook group along with a resource. So check that out. And I'll see you next time on our call. Take care, guys.